All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move into the 60s. We're going to start with some of the teachers who first came to teach in the 60s and taught for a significant length of time. I've skipped over the people that taught once or twice. These are the guys that really made a difference to camp. And we start with Atanas Kolarowski. He taught 11 times over the course of the next 40, 50 years. Dennis Voxel taught for 5 years, but had a tremendous impact, primarily because he introduced Yves Moreau to camp. This is another picture, we'll talk about it later, of Dennis with a protege, I guess we should say. C. Stuart Smith was the primary supplier of Scottish dancing for many years. Andor Tampo brought Hungarian dance of all types and stripes. John Pappas was our Greek expert for years and a remarkable musician. We'll hear more about him. Gordon Tracy taught for 9 years, Scandinavian dance. There's Yves Moreau. We'll find out a lot about him. He taught for 16 years over the length of our illustrious career. I'll get to this picture in a minute, but this is when Yves was not even teaching yet. He came as Dennis Voxel's assistant in 1967. So let's go back and talk about some of these movers and shakers that made a difference to folk dance camp. I don't remember whether it's Bruce that talked about Atanas coming to camp the first time.
Yes, Atanas really was one of the first people we brought in quite directly from their country. Many of them before lived in this country, but not Atanas. So getting him out of Yugoslavia was a real challenge, and getting through customs and so forth, on both ends, there and here. He was not able to arrive at folk dance camp until the last Saturday of the second week. So first week people didn't get to see him at all. Second week people met with Atanas on a Saturday morning, and he taught all his dances at one time on a Saturday morning to the second week people.
I know there's a wonderful skit that Yves Moreau did about Atanas that showed him teaching a complicated dance. It has part one, very slowly, lift, step, step, lift, step, step, lift, step, step. Good, let's do it with the music. And so he goes lift, step, step 3 times. And then he breaks out into this wild improvisation, and then he bows to the audience and says, did you get it? But this was a skit that Yves did, and Atanas was known for that. He would get impatient teaching, and he'd just say, oh, let's just do this by watching. It's easier.
And he didn't always teach the dance the same way twice.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And it was usually left up to Fusai, his sort of acolyte, to make sure that it was taught correctly the second, third, and fourth times.
We all learned to watch Fusai.
Yeah. So Dennis Voxel, again, was a Balkan teacher. He didn't specialize in any particular genre, but was all over the Balkans, did extensive research, and ran into Yves Moreau doing Bulgarian and brought Yves to camp. But this picture, I think, Bob, you know the guy on the right?
Yeah, the guy on the right, his name was Gil Kundert. He was from Stockton, and after his folk dancing time, he studied serious ballet and ended up dancing in the ballet company with the Metropolitan Opera in New York.
Not a bad climbing of the career ladder, huh? And it all started with Dennis Voxel. Okay, C. Stuart Smith, Scottish.
C. Stuart had a reputation. In the first year he came to folk dance camp, we had the lounge right across from Ralph Page's room. I talked about that earlier. And in he walks and so forth to the lounge. He did not wear skivvies or anything underneath his kilt. And the poor ladies in the faculty lounge had a hard time dealing with that until somebody took him aside and said, might want to put on some briefs or something like that, which he did do the rest of the time. But he didn't bother him.
Oh, yeah, he was there when I was there. Yeah. I did a talent show with him, not a talent show, an assembly with him once.
I don't remember.
Yeah, there's some great pictures of Kamrin standing there with this really nonplussed look on her face, and Stuart's kneeling beside her. She has a kilt on, and he has her leg up like this, sticking straight out, and just standing there. Great picture.
I think I've seen that picture where he's pointing to the correct procedure and the correct position for dancing.
Right, right.
And Andor.
Oh yeah. All the ladies loved him, especially when they at the lawn parties and stuff. He'd bring out this big whip and he'd be whipping it around and cracking and everything, and all the girls would go, oh. Quite the man, quite the strong dancer. A lot of stories about him centered around World War II and afterwards with the Russians and escaping Hungary during the revolution. So, like Anatole led a very active life in Europe until he escaped to the United States. Didn't really know anything about folk dancing in the United States until he lived in the New York area and went to a workshop where Alice Reese was teaching. And he saw that Hungarian dance was being taught, and this lady, Alice Reese, was teaching this dance. And he sat on the sideline and just watched the whole thing, a dance that he, of course, knew much better than she did and could do it even better. And then at the final dance, he got up and did the dance and did all his slapping and everything, and then went to walk out, and she ran over and asked about who he was, and he says, oh, I'm just a nobody from Hungary. But he said at that point he knew he could make a living teaching dance in the United States. This is a story he related to me sitting in Jerry's room one evening with some bottle of wine and maybe a few other things. He was quite a character. We used to go swimming all the time in the afternoon, and he could take water and squirt it with his hand and probably get out to 20 feet.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. So what we would do is tell unsuspecting girls to go over there and splash water on them, and then he'd spend the rest of the time following them around the pool, squirting them with this water from quite a distance. He is quite entertaining, really good character.
You never wanted to fool with Andor in the pool, however.
That's
Because he could turn you upside down so quickly that you didn't know what happened.
Yeah, he was a big-time swimmer, apparently, so, among other things.
And John Pappas, I have some lovely pictures of him when he first came to camp, which we'll see in a minute. But he became our Greek expert, and he came as a teenager to camp, met his soon-to-be wife at camp, and they're still married. And he learned to play the clarinet. Am I correct?
Well, he was a self-trained musician. Couldn't read music. Never really had any formal training. So he already could play the bouzouki, and this is probably in '63 or so. And he was learning to play the clarinet. And so he wanted me to accompany him on the guitar. So we started in the dormitories in the afternoon until we got kicked out, because playing the clarinet, there's a reed, and if you don't hold it right, it'll squeal quite loudly. So this would happen. We got kicked out and had to go to the gym. But I remember him learning to play the clarinet and not able to read music at all. I had no idea what musical notation was. But he learned well enough, both the bouzouki and the clarinet, that him and Paula went to Athens, Greece, and he supported them by playing in the tavernas in the evenings. And they stayed in Athens until the Greek government informed him that it was time for him, because he was still considered a Greek citizen, even though he was born in the United States, dual citizenship, that he needed to enlist in the army. And then that's when they decided to come back to San Francisco, in Stockton. Well, he now lives in Stockton. Wound up an English teacher.
Okay, we'll see some more pictures of John later as a musician, and I'm sure Bob will have some stories about him at that point. Gordon Tracy, Scandinavian.
I just saw him one time at camp. He had come before I started and made his mark. And I just remember him teaching Scandinavian one year and didn't really know that much about him, but a good reputation.
I had a flashback to 1970 when he was at Stockton, and we were just beginning to take film of the teachers and dances they taught. He probably took more time to do his section than any other teacher we've ever had at Stockton, because he was a perfectionist. And if he wasn't happy with what he had done, he had to do it over again, and maybe again, and again. And we still have film of him, although it's not a good quality, of him doing dances from 1970 on film.
One year, he procrastinated with getting his dance descriptions in for the syllabus to the point that he came to camp about 3 days before it started, and Dad sat him down in the office and he started typing straight onto the stencil. As soon as he finished the page, it got run off. I think that was a lesson learned.
Well, I'll tell you a story about a teacher who will remain unnamed at this point. We were well into the computer age when he could have sent me an electronic copy. Even I would have accepted a scan of the documents, but he mailed them to me. He put them in an envelope and mailed his documents to me to retype, and so I had to scan them and character read them and turn them into something readable. But I thought, wow, this, not only did he wait till the very last minute, but I got them in a form that was completely unhandy. So many teachers will have incurred the wrath of the research committee because of their inability or reluctance or dislike of preparing dance notations. But they're a vital part of Stockton Folk Dance Camp.
So your predecessor, Ruth Ruling, one of her main duties early on in camp was doing all the notes for Anatole.
Oh, because he wouldn't do them.
He wouldn't do them. So he would do the dance and show her, and then she would write it down and discuss it, and she would do up all the notes.
That sounds familiar. So Yves Moreau started in camp in he was a guest, not a guest at camp. He came to camp with Dennis Buxell as his assistant, so he was not yet a teacher. But these are some of the teachers that were there at the time, who actually, I think this is probably staff and a bunch of other people, but we'll get to that in a minute. These are the people that, in this previous picture, they're over here. This is Ned and Marion Galt, and this is a picture of them a little later, and I'll get to that one in a minute. So they taught for 25 years, so longer than anyone else except for Jerry. So they had the number 2 position, and they did couple dancing and technique and Austrian and a wide variety. They had a performing group that came to camp many times and were really a mainstay at camp for many, many years. And I love this picture particularly because of how he's holding her. And I guess he was demonstrating some kind of dip that they were supposed to do in some dance, whether it was English tango or I don't know what. But I thought
how not to do it.
How not to do it. I guess that would be a how not to. But that was a pretty, she was very trusting that she just lay there and let him flip her over and hold her up and everybody looks a little shocked by this. Should we try this next? And this is, I think, maybe the 50th or the 60th. Yes, Denise, I see that. The 50th or 60th anniversary where they came and did a cameo. And they're both still alive. They are still dancing. They have a weekly dance class. She is a calligrapher, did a lot of the covers and artwork for the camp. And, of course, they taught. Denise, why don't you hold that up again and see if we can get it center screen. They wrote some wonderful little dance booklets called 101 Easy Folk Dances, and they had a successor volume and I think a third one.
Yeah, they had 3.
There were 3 volumes, yeah.
Yeah.
They were really kind of crib sheets. They weren't really any way to learn the dance, but if you knew the dance and just had to remember the sequence, or was it a hop or a step, they were really good, brief, almost sometimes, 2 or 3 to a page. They were just very concise ways of remembering very popular dances, and all of them fairly easy, 1 or 2 parts. He didn't try to get complicated. A lot of progressive mixer dances, but he contributed a lot to folk dance camp and to folk dancing in general. She just turned 100 in April. She had a heart valve surgery that she's recovering from. And I get an email from them on occasion letting me know that they're still around. So this is one that shows an early year, I believe this is 1960, that shows Bob Harris here in the back. This is John Pappas, who we saw earlier. That was his first year. And his wife is over here.
A little farther. There she is.
Yeah.
Right here, no?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Paula.
Yeah. And B. Mitchell, let me get over a little farther. That's Bruce's mom. She was sort of in charge of the young people. This is Bruce's sister, B's daughter, who was at one point married to Gordon. And do we have anybody else I should be mentioning?
Heath Smith's daughter Marilyn's in the middle.
Yeah.
Marilyn.
Right there. You had her. Yep.
Okay, so this was the class of the young people for 1960. People that made an impact on camp for a long time. So 1962, what are our costs up to here? If I can move this up. Tuition, $80 for 1 week. Tuition only if you want to live off campus. And here's the sort of people that we had coming in 1962. Again, you can see that most of them are from the Bay Area, from California. We have somebody coming in from Brussels and Gordon Tracy coming in from Seattle. This was Gordon's first year, and there he is. And this is Bruce and Bruce's mom, Bee. And I think we discussed who some of the other people are. Here's Lawton over here on the side. How old were you then, Gordon?
Would have been 21.
21. A child.
Yeah.
This is an early candle lighting ceremony that we have at Folk Dance Camp. And Gordon is here. That's how we know it was 1961. He is in the first year campers circle that forms first. This is not the ceremony that we have now. And then the experienced long-term campers would come in with lighted candles and make an inner circle and then turn around and light the candles of the first year campers. So this was a slightly different ceremony. We didn't have the candle in the middle yet because that candle was made from the stubs of all these other little candles over the years. And but this was the ceremony in 1961. We have a lot of them over the years.
Hold that picture.
Hold it.
Yes, because if you look in the background, you can see what looks like curtains hanging on the wall, and that's actually burlap. And we would come in before camp started, and we would staple the burlap, have a tall ladder, crow's nest type, and we would go up to the top, staple that burlap to the wall, which was just a wooden, probably plywood type of wall in the old gymnasium where the main camp was held, the main venue. And then at the end of camp, we would just pull all the burlap down. We wouldn't take the staples out. So each year, there was another row of staples up there. So it absolutely amazed me that the school would let this occur, that we were just totally ruining the wall with all these staples. But that's how they put the burlap up to cut down on echo.
And how many years do you think you did that?
Well, they were doing it when I started, and that continued on until we got the parachute, which was probably 5 or 6 years later, maybe a little bit longer. So we.
And I think this might be Bruce here. You think?
Right there, looks like it.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
No, maybe not.
He liked to wear white socks, long white socks with his, shorts.
Well, there's no way to see what kind of color socks he's wearing there.
Right.
So. Okay, this is another, a slightly later year. You can see that now we have the candle in the middle that was made from other candles.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what year this was. It wasn't labeled, but I thought I would share that
The
one as well.
70s.
That's the old Callison Hall.
It's in Callison,
In
yeah.
Callison, yeah.
There's
Okay, so the 70s.
yeah. I mean, that's how
Okay, we're going to go forward to two particularly interesting characters. At least they were interesting to me. I called them the two Ediths. Edith Cuthbert was a longtime dancer. I think she started dancing in the early 50s. And her passion was costumes and music. So she was pretty much in charge of the camp music collection. And if whatever the camp didn't have, she supplied. These were our 45 RPM and 78 records, 78 and 33 and 3. There are lots of different records that we had stored. And this is a later year where she's still discussing something. This is Jack McKay and Gordon with Edie. By the way, she was called Edith Cuthbert Jr. because her mother, who was also a folk dancer and well known in the area, was Edith Cuthbert Sr. And in order to distinguish between the two of them, she became Edith Cuthbert Jr. so they would know who they were talking about. And still later, she's still playing with records. She's got a cassette tape deck, so this has got to be a little bit later. And some sort of a party outfit. She was known for her knowledge of what she had, so that when somebody came up, I remember in the 90s when Israel Jacobi was at the Long Theater after party, and he asked for Fejeraska, and she looked at him and kind of puzzled. She said, "I don't have it, but I can get it for you tomorrow." So she went to the collection in the UOP library and got a copy of it made, probably onto a cassette, brought it in the next week. And Israel Jacobi, who is an Israeli specialist, he's a Yemenite Israeli, proceeded to do this hotshot Romanian dance, I think it was Romanian, that he had learned from Mihai David, because Israel was in Mihai David's performing group in college, along with a few other important crazy people. Marcia Clark, some of you will remember that name. Marcia Clark was involved with the O.J. Simpson trial as an attorney, and she was Israel Jacobi's dance partner in that performing group. So that's his claim to fame, but he just blew our socks off. We were so amazed to see this Yemenite Israeli getting up and doing this crazy-ass dance, and nobody knew he could do that. So this is Edie bringing costumes to camp. She had an extensive costume collection that they're still archiving. She's died recently, and they're still going through the house that she lived in, the upper floors. All the bedrooms were full of costumes, most of them in excellent condition. She preserved them. They were in sacks and garment bags, and she would load up her little VW and haul this stuff to camp. And then she shared these costumes with the local dancers. So anybody that came to camp that wanted to wear a costume on Tuesday night for the costume parade could just go over to Edie's room, or I think she had a room in the basement of one of the halls, and she would allow them to try on costumes and then wear them for the photo collection. There are probably one every year, sometimes two, of the various groups of women, sometimes men, who would go to Edie to get a costume. She collected authentic costumes. They were beautiful.
No,
She had to make two trips, one with the costumes and another one with the records.
Yeah. Sometimes three, depending on what she was planning on bringing.
Yeah, I just remember hauling all her records in to set it up. A real pain.
And she continued to come. She continued to come to the camp long into the 2000s. But she had a caretaker for a while that came with her. But she loved camp, but she stopped being able to dance. And she was notorious for falling asleep at the drop of a hat. I have lots of pictures of her snoozing over in a corner because she just, got to the end of her rope at the end of the day after she'd been up with the after party until it closed down every night. She was a tireless worker. And Edith Thompson. I showed this picture earlier, and this is Jack McKay here and Walter Grothe going out to Murphy's, and she supplied the entertainment. She was almost inseparable from her accordion. One year she brought hobby horses to camp. You can see they're all on them. Where she got so many of them, I don't know. How she got them to camp, I don't know. But they had a race to see who could get across the gym floor the fastest. I think Bob.
Yep.
Yep, that's Bob. And I think this is Bruce. on one of the hobby horses. And
Bev
Bev Wilder, I have no idea what he's doing behind her except maybe coaching. And this was a costume that Edith wore, which I just got such a kick out of because she's got a mop on her head and the longest false eyelashes I think I've ever seen. But she was a remarkable character. She just had so much fun going on. I'll flip back and let you guys talk about it. This was at the end zone. And again, she would bring her music with her. And we'll talk about the end zone in a minute, but this is Edith in her prime. Bob is accompanying her on the bass.
She was really a spark plug. She was not a teacher as such, as far as teaching dances particularly, but she was a folk singer, and you could see her, of course, the accordion and all that sort of stuff, and end zone and places like this, where she always had that, and everybody could sing along, and she was a real spark plug for spirit, no doubt about that. She started her own camp. It was not a dance camp, but it was her own camp somewhere in the Bay Area or up the coast. And because of that, she dropped out of Stockton. She had this for probably her last years, I remember right, but she brought these hobby horses for her camp, but we got a chance to use them that particular year.
They did a teacher training workshop, the Federation did, and Edith Thompson was the teacher at the workshop I went to, and she did a great job. She was wonderful. And one of the most profound things she ever said that I remember is when you do parties, always make people wish that they hadn't ended rather than making them wish that they would end. I've never forgotten that. Cut them short, make people wish that it wouldn't end. That was one of her very profound statements.
Just know that first year that Jerry came to camp, he flew out. She lived in San Bruno, and when he got here, he went and stayed with her and her husband, and thought, well, this is not so bad. It's nice and cool here. Temperatures aren't very high, so this will be wonderful. And then he was put in the back seat of a air-conditioned car, and they proceeded to drive to Stockton on apparently a very hot day in the valley, and he said by the time he got there, he swore he was never coming back again.
I think that was Neil on the violin. That was her husband.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what can we say about the end zone, which is where all these pictures were taken?
Well, that was a little cafeteria not cafeteria, a little cafe that served the students, and they would open up late at night when we finished the Once Over Lightly. So this is probably 11:30 at night, where they opened up and everybody would congregate or go over there and have cherry lime rickeys to drink and food to eat.
George Cows. That was another drink they had there.
Oh, okay.
Root beer freeze is what it was.
Root beer freeze, and as you can see, it was more than just eating. They would start playing music and singing and have all kinds of parties in there and spend an hour or two there before they adjourned to the pavilion, or the Quonset hut, for the after party.
Really weren't
So there was an after party after this?
Yeah.
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 The owner of the end zone had a soft spot in his heart for folk dance camp because he was from Denmark. He was not born here, and the fact that we occasionally did Danish dances really thrilled him to death. And this was the campus coffee shop. It was open for students all year round.
And on this picture, when I first saw this, I looked at this and I said, oh my God, she's got a laptop in 1962. It really fooled me for a second. It's obviously a 3-ring binder, but when I first opened this picture, I went, laptop? How could that be? But I don't know all the people in here, but it certainly seems like a lot of fun.
Like Bob.
I'm in the corner,
Yeah, this is Bob.
And then the young fellow with his hand up looks like Chip Smith. That would be Ace Smith.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I worked in the end zone the last year it was open on scholarship. That was one of my scholarship jobs, was waitressing at the end zone.
I've forgotten that.
Well, there's Anatole with a different cap. on the left. Scroll over to the left, yeah.
Jerry,
right
Jerry
there.
Hill.
I can't scroll over any farther, but that's him,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you can see, he always wore a little cap, and you can see that's a different one.
And this is Jerry here.
Yeah.
And the end zone was replaced by what we now have, the hole in the wall. This is a picture of Darlene, who reportedly, according to my history books, was the one who thought up the word the hole in the wall. Supposedly somebody taught a dance where maybe it was a contra called the hole in the wall, and she thought, oh, that's the perfect name for this little after hours gathering spot. So she named it, and they made this little poster, and they had here's our price list.
There's
Here's
another
Denise over
job
there
I
with
had.
Darlene. And this is, she was, Farrow, was that her last name?
Well, it was that time until she got married, yeah.
She got
And then
married
she,
to Sam
no, she
Cummings.
was Judy Thurston, and then she was Judy Cummings.
And that lasted for quite a while. Judy did a lot of she was the manager for many years, and these are some of her helpers. And now it's managed by Ellie Weiner, and she's had it for probably the last 15, maybe 20 years. She's been the manager at the late night. This is the kind of stuff that we would, it's changed, I think, over the years of what's being offered depending on what people want to have. But it's almost a full service. You get sandwiches and ice cream, and we used to be able to have beer, but not anymore.
Yeah, it's has always amazed me that the school in Bon Appetit allows us to use their kitchen facilities and refrigerators in order to do this. And I think it's just because we predate, at this point, everything there except maybe music camp. And it's always been this way, so we managed to continue. We try to cooperate with the kitchen as much as we can. And the reason we started the hole in the wall is that the campus did extensive remodeling and took the end zone out, so it was no longer available. So we had to come up with something, and the hole in the wall was it. And it's amazing that it's still going strong.
At the very beginning, the menu consisted of Greek salads and Greek coffee that John Pappas made.
Yep, that's true.
That was the startup.
This is what I think I took this back maybe 2011. So this was kind of what we had at the time. It's got a leftover pizza from whatever pizza party and dessert, and there's a freezer here in the back you can't see that has ice cream in it. So some of the crazy antics that went on in the 60s. This was the performing group that Bruce had, I believe.
Not really, it was just their excess, those of us at camp that were into shoe polish. Morley Layton is the Polish dance teacher. He's the one upside down. But he also was a shoe plotter. And he worked with us some, just doing some plottles and stuff like that. So those of us at camp that had lederhosen, we just put them on and did an assembly. And that was a part of the assembly right there.
That's actually part of an actual dance, the Russian plottler. Two guys fight over a girl.
Did one of them win?
No. A third would come in and waltz off with the girl. And then we would put our arms around each other and go off the other direction.
And this is one of the early lawn parties. I don't know when these started in terms of the lawn parties, but they went on for many. I mean, I think that I can't remember a year when they didn't have a lawn party. And some of our most popular dances were shown for the first time. They were introduced at lawn parties. It wasn't something that was planned. Somebody just showed up and said, I've got some music, put this on. And they would teach a dance, and people came back, and that was the hit of the camp, was something that showed up at the lawn party. So I understand Walter Grothe did them for a couple of decades.
Oh, yes.
Was there someone in there before Denise took over, or was Denise the second that did the lawn parties?
Oh,
Yeah,
I think there was a whole slew of people that
Yeah, I did them for a long, long time.
Yeah, I have pictures that go back quite a ways at the lawn parties.
Yeah.
And this is the infamous parachute that we will find out about. This is when it's up. You can see this is Anatole giving some kind of a lecture. And this is when it's on the ground. So You put that up, Gordon?
Well, a bunch of us did, yes. Yeah, the trick was getting underneath it with a high ladder and getting up on top and attaching it to the ceiling. That was the biggest job, and once that was done, then we'd pull it off to the sides and attach it around. It was a Saturday project.
And
That
it was,
chute was military surplus. It was originally used to drop tanks.
and where did we get it?
A guy that was in my folks' dance group in Stockton worked at the supply depot close by, and he borrowed it.
Was
Permanent
that like
loan.
a permanent borrow?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Now
It's Army surplus. They weren't using it.
that's a gym that the University of Pacific Tigers played their basketball in for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
Till they started winning, then they moved out.
They went to a concrete floor rather than this floor.
Ooh.
In 1967, Lawton Harris died in June, right before camp, and Jack McKay was sort of elected by the board to be the next director, and he took over with 6 weeks and $1,000 in the checkbook and managed to throw camp together on our behalf.
I was the one that inherited the $1,000 checkbook.
Oh, was that you? Okay.
That was me.
Maybe Jack got something else.
When Jack passed it on, he gave me the checkbook with $1,000 in it.
So he took over in '67, and he was there until '87, I believe, so 20 years.
Yep, 20 years.
And then we have, this is just an odd series of pictures that of probably a talent show, maybe?
No, this would be at, this is in the gymnasium. You can see that. So it was just entertainment during the Once Over Lightly.
And this is, you identified the people?
That's Reese Faber, and as taking the man's part.
Yeah.
A dancer from Lawton's group is there.
Yeah. His name was, I had it and just lost it. In addition to being tall, he also played the musical saw, and he'd play saw on a number of talent shows, too.
And I don't think I have a picture of that either. And this was, I guess, another bit of entertainment. Looks like Bruce is behind here, and this is Gordon, and
Morley.
Layton. Maybe Steve Katansky. I'm not convinced that's the case, but they seem to think that's Steve. And this is something, what's going on?
Ice axe dance is what it is. Thank God we weren't using ice axes because those were just made of wood. I had a performing group that did that dance, and every time we rehearsed it, we could rehearse it perfectly. You think we could do it perfectly when we danced it in performance? No, because you have to pass the axe, not the person next to you, but the next person down. So you always had to watch the axe coming to you, and you hope the heck you threw your axe in a proper amount of distance. That's Morley Layton right over here in the white, and right here, that's Morley Layton, the one who taught it to us.
So another comment, along the top there with those decorations, that's another piece of burlap that we used to run along the sides above the seats to help with the noise. So another piece of burlap that we used to put up every year.
This is another one of the assemblies, I guess, but Jack got roped into this one. He's a square dance master, but he was roped into doing an assembly with the guys.
Well, this is the same assembly in time as the
Another picture?
the upside down one.
Okay, the vendors. The vendors came on pretty early. We had to have a way of getting the music and sending it off with the teachers. The people who came to camp wanted to take the music with them. They didn't have accordion players and piano players, so they had to get music. So the vendors came on pretty early. This is Ed Kremers. He had one of the early record shops, Ed Kremers Folk Shop. I believe he was located in San Francisco. And he also sold sound systems. You can see here, this is probably an old Caliphone. This is another picture of him much later, obviously, probably from the, I think it was the 90s maybe. still selling records. And this is John Filsich. We saw pictures of him earlier. In addition to being a fine teacher and dedicated to the pursuit of all things folk dance, he also had he was a vendor, and he continued to sell records and CDs and cassettes and syllabi and costumes and anything related to the folk arts. I believe he was a big fan at the Italian festivals, and
Yes.
he used to go from camp. He'd leave a couple of days early so he could get to the Italian festival and set up where he would sell Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin CDs, along with everything else that he had. So this is Marge Gaitsky. She came in also with the folk motif. She was, Bora Gaitsky was the folk dance teacher. She came along and was selling things later with her daughter. This is Bill Lideker, who was with the Berkeley Folk Dancers. And this is a more modern picture of Marge with her daughter Anna in the 90s. And they continued to sell up until the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And Edie, I forgot her name.
Reichard, Edie Reichard.
Edie Reichard. She had a costume collection. Oh, there it is. It says Edie's in the back here. Edie. So she had a mostly clothing vendor. Betsy was a folk crafts more than folk music. So she had jewelry and dolls and shoes and things like that. And going back here,
Used to produce a lot of the music used at folk dance camp. And he had a couple labels that he used. One was called Buccaneer.
About 15 labels.
Yeah, and the other one was called Jolly Roger. So you can imagine where that music came from. He would go around and gather up music and have musicians, folk musicians, play stuff, and he'd record it, then he would make the records. And that's where we got a lot of our original music, was through John and his efforts of collecting this and selling it and making a living off of doing that. So John was quite a character and
Still is.
not necessarily easy to work with.
and he's now in his 90s, and he's come to every camp except the first one.
Right, could not afford it.
Yeah. There were a bunch of other vendors, though.
You mentioned Marge. She was selling opanki that Bora made.
Yeah.
Her husband worked with leather. He also was a bookbinder.
Beautiful, Punky.
Lasha Savanaska was one.
Oh,
Brought costumes several years.
Was Peg Almond was one?
Oh, I think early on, yes, costumes.
Yep, she sold shoes.
Yes, shoes, yeah.
Well, Edie was one of the people who went to the Japanese Federation event in Japan the year that I went there. So she was part of that group, and I think she was selling costumes, but I'm not positive. And that's Betsy Croak, I think was her last name.
Okay, the musicians and the music. We have had extraordinary support from musicians over the years. The music, I'm just going to show a bunch of slides, and we can talk about the musicians in general when I give you an overview. This was the sound system they had to bring to the field where they had the end of camp extravaganza, where the public was invited in to sit in the stands and the dancers would be on the grass, and they had to schlep the sound system out to the field, and this is what it looked like. It was quite an undertaking. It's not like taking a boom box out. You got to take the whole car. So this is what what it would look like. They would have the audience. This would just local people that maybe the following year decided they'd come to camp because it looked like so much fun, and then they would have the campers out on the field. This is another picture of the same idea. And this big event drew a lot of people. There was a program that was printed, and many of the dances we're still doing. This was in 1958. So some of the dances, you can run down the list here. I didn't mark all of them. I just, picked 4 and said, okay, these are examples of ones that we're still doing. Many of them we are also still doing. But the fact that they've gone, we're still doing them how many years later, 40, 50 years later. These are dances that survive. I'm sure Zillertaler was hysterical with all the people doing them. This is another sound system. Here's Walter with his ever-present pipe. Ralph Page calling a contra, probably. And there's records in the little boxes here. This is another thing that the vendors sold. They sold records and they sold these cases, because if you were teaching, you had to have a huge collection of records, and you didn't bring them in, you know, in a paper box. So you had these metal boxes to carry them. This is one of the pickup bands. You can see Edith over here on the piano, and Jack, I don't think he's playing anything. Anatole is playing the bench. Ralph Page is playing guitar. I don't know. There's Jerry's calling, I'm sure, a square. And we've got a trombone player and a couple of violins and a bass. But these were pickup bands. If you had an instrument you could play, you stepped up to the bar and played with everybody else. This is Ned Galt. One of the times that he showed up, he was quite proficient, still is, on all manner of accordion. This is I think this was a talent show, I couldn't be wrong, but this is, here's Bob on the bass, Eve Moreau on whatever little whistle or accordion he's playing, and John Pappas in the back on the guitar. Two other teachers who were also accomplished musicians, Atanas and Bora Gaichki, were both good at the accordion and used to come out very frequently onto the floor and just play whatever it is they wanted to play. Ercheman, who knew? He was also an accordion player. Jim Shoemaker still lives in the Stockton area, and John Ayers on his clarinet.
Sacramento.
This is another pickup band. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to show you the variety and the extraordinary occasions when they would just get, you know, pull up a bunch of chairs and start playing. Ellie Wiener on the flute. Here's Ercheman in the back. Marianne Taylor. Jeff is now playing the bass. You must have been off at graduate school, Bob. This is Dennis Boxell playing the bells. Out of focus, but again, we're up into this looks like Steve Katansky here playing the drums.
George Tallboys.
Little darker, but the same idea in a kafana. I'll start run back and we can talk about various bands, but we just have continued to have a remarkable assemblage of musicians that show up and play for us. It's really an amazing opportunity that we give to musicians and to dancers to be able to dance to live music. So let's talk about our musicians. Bob, you played with a lot of them.
Well, not till well into the pickup band stage. The early years, it was strictly volunteered. I think John Pappas did a lot of the coordinating when they were doing dances, playing music that could be danced to. But after a while, it was decided that needed to raise the level a little bit, and then we started putting together bands for more of a professional level musicians.
And it doesn't look like anybody's using sheet music. Are they just winging it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, this was one of the few pictures where you could see, but the rest of them, they know the tune and they all played by ear. Pretty amazing.
They didn't play very many pieces.
Right.
Did they practice?
Not much.
So the pressure was growing every year, even though we had these bands that pick up, and that was very enjoyable. What was occurring was we were getting other dance camps were having professional bands, bands that were formed that would play a lot more of the music for dancing. So we were getting a lot of pressure to do the same. So one year we decided to just flip it and to hire a band. And I think Barbara McGowan was the first band leader, and we asked her to put together a band, and we've gone on that way ever since. So George Tallboys on the violin, his first public appearance that I know of occurred during a talent show where he played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with a violin that had the sound post in the wrong place. He was also just starting to learn the violin, so you can imagine the quality of that tune.
And he kept restarting.
And,
He'd make a mistake.
Make a mistake, and he'd say, "Oh, sorry," and he'd start over again. So it was almost painful. But he lived in Hawaii, Honolulu, and my dad had a violin repair shop there. So after a couple of years, he took his violin into my dad, and my dad tuned up his violin, put the sound post in the right place, and after that, at least the music, when he hit the note right, it sounded pretty good. But George was quite a character with that violin, and tall boys worked because he was like about 6'6" or so. He was really tall. So anyhow, people would be laughing and giggling in the audience when he was playing, and it just never fazed him. He just kept right on going. So it's almost like a Jack Benny comedy routine with the violin. So.
The changeover that Gordon was talking about took place the year that Jack retired from camp as director. A scholarship fund was established with donations that had been given to camp, and those donations went to a fund for having live music at camp. That was really the start of bringing and creating an orchestra, officially an orchestra for camp. That's Kamrin right down in the right-hand corner there.
Yeah.
Right here.
Here's George Tallboy again.
Again, and John, yeah.
And Jeff played in many bands. He was a good bass player.
So this may have been the first band or close to it.
Yeah.
Well, this is it's labeled 97. It may not be true, but it's that's what the picture was supposedly taken.
Well, that'd be it. Was
that
the first year, Bruce?
And Jaap came originally as a musician, or did he come originally as a teacher?
Teacher.
And then he decided he was going to join every band after that.
Yes. Yeah.
Barbara and Robert McCollum.
There are other teachers who did the same thing.
I think the year we had the stock tunes was the year that they had to make the cassette fit for all the music for Danny Hathaway. Remember? Because he refused to bring music.
I remember that.
Because he said, well, Irish dance was always done to live music. So in order for the dancers to have music to take home with them, the band made the cassette recording.
That is true.
Let's talk about 1969. Just because it was a very remarkable year as far as who was there, we have Atanas down here. This is Gracie. She's still coming to camp. Jerry. Bruce is back here in the back. Gordon. And over here, this is Steve Katansky's first year. He did not come as a teacher. He came as a camper. And Jeff, this was his first year, and they were roommates. So this was a story that Jeff told me later. He says, yeah, we were roommates first year. Yeah, good friends. John Pappas is back here, and this is Denise. This is the only picture I could find of her from her first year. We managed to get her profile and her hair. It's the only reason I recognized it. So that was her first year at camp in 1969. And over here, I hope I can get her in here. This is Sunny Blowland. She came as a camper. She's not a teacher yet, but she came as a camper and later became one of our prominent Romanian teachers. This is Ann. She's in very few pictures. She lived in Lodi or Stockton, so she commuted. So there's a lot of stuff that she just never got into the pictures. And I happened to find this one of her. She's been a mainstay in the office for decades. And she is the woman that updates those cards that we saw earlier. She's the one that pulls all the cards out and finds the people that have been missing and puts them in the old cards and makes new cards for the new people. And she knows those cards backward and forward and keeps the staples in where they belong. She's an amazing lady and knows everybody. She knows, if I have a picture of somebody and say, who is this? Ann knows. Ann knows who everybody is.
She does the housing, or has been doing the housing for quite a while. So she knows which room you're in, too.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
one thing about the Sonny Blowland,
Yeah.
she was Johnny Pappas's first teacher. He was at Mission High School, and she was the teacher there, and introduced him to folk dancing. And so that's just a little sidelight. And then she, of course, moved on to Berkeley, and Johnny moved on to all kinds of wonderful stuff in the folk music and dance arena.
Nice stuff to know. That's great. Okay, into the 70s. What are we being charged these days?
Yeah, that's not 70s because Dad's still alive.
Well, I think he was just put on. It says 72 somewhere on here. I thought.
73. What?
Sorry, you're right. My bad.
Yeah, I think he was just listed as the founder.
Homer,
Yeah. So here are the papas. Moshe Skyle, the Israeli teacher that year, and a private room for an extra $5.
Papa's just celebrated their 53rd wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Ah, yeah, that's another camp romance gone good.
Some of them had to.
Yeah. So this was Eve's first trek in 1970 as a member of the faculty, and he's there with some quite a bunch. This is Edie Cuthbert down here. We saw Ned and Marion Galt.
Chapa Palfi is next to Eve's left.
Eve Morrell next to him. Chava
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chapa Palfi.
And here's John Filsich in the back. Bruce is in every picture.
There.
There are the McKays, Gordon.
Looks like Bob next to Bev. Carol
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bob with his hat.
Miriam Lidster.
Yeah, she's still coming to camp. She was still on the faculty in the 70s. She's a longtime dance teacher.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
This
Janice.
is still here.
Janice O'Connor right there is Jeff's sister.
Ah, right here.
Yep.
And I love the story about this one. This is Denise in 1970 or 71, and she's got this beautiful costume on, and she has to tell us what she's wearing on her feet.
Yeah, that's on the Veracruz costume, and that was the year I didn't miss a single class, took every class. My blisters had blisters, and I'm wearing my bedroom slippers because I couldn't get shoes on.
Ethnic bedroom slippers.
Yeah, ethnic bedroom slippers. And that's Mario Vlahovic to my left, and I'm not sure who the other young man is. And there I am with Susie Cashin, who was my Mexican dance teacher.
And you were in Los Lupeños, the Mexican dance troupe, for a couple of years, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And this was a year we had Shlomo Bahar down here at the bottom. He was the Israeli
Well, that's
teacher.
Tom Bozigian, isn't it?
Yeah, no, down
In the
here.
middle.
In the middle.
Oh, I didn't
This
see
is Tom. There's another head down here. Do you see the head?
I totally missed that.
So that's Shlomo Bahar. He taught Israeli, Tom Bozigian, Armenian, and Mikhai David taught Romanian that year. This is one of those pictures you just look at and think, I have to share this one. It's just too crazy. And this is the Bannermans. The Bannermans were a collective, I guess. How you could describe it? It was a multi-family extravaganza that came to camp one year and delighted everybody with their big circle dancing, big circle clogging. And I have lots and lots of pictures. These were just very cute ones that they managed to throw together. This was one of the, I guess, one of the entertainment during one of the after Once Over Lightly, I'm guessing.
Probably, yeah.
And this was in, I think this is where they did the videotaping, if I'm not.
Yeah, Wendell Phillips.
Yeah.
For assemblies.
Yeah, we did assemblies there for a number of years.
And they have a camp at Thanksgiving back in North Carolina or South Carolina.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
Jeff
right.
O'Connor still
North.
goes back there and teaches.
yeah.
The kids
All
are
right,
getting,
in 1975, Polish dance. Ada Jovaneska came, and he was a returning teacher by then, but he was instrumental in bringing Macedonian dance. She was with Polish. Dick Crum was still coming to camp, and Andr Chanko. You can see down here the prices. So this is 75 again. Here we have the two accordionists. You saw a picture of them earlier playing. So they sat down. They had probably entertained us with them for a while. And we have Jeff O'Connor, later to become a director of camp. Ada. And Bruce in the back. He's in the back of all the pictures. He always stands in the same place. It's really easy to spot him. And Steve Turner started coming to camp then, and he became our videographer for many, many years. And here the Galts are still coming to camp. They're still the mainstay. Johnny Pappas.
Andor Zampo next to him.
Yeah, Andor's next to him.
Put his glasses on.
And this is a picture from 75, I believe, and I think Kamrin knows about this picture.
Yeah, Ada came to do some work with Ensemble International, the Galtz group, and so she would come and do some teaching and set some suites on us. And so this must have been a little demo that we did out in the lawn. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but we have Ray and Eleanor Bacon on the left. They were long-term campers. Ray did a lot on the ground. Eleanor did sewing and costumes. Behind the guy, there's Polly and Ed Burke, who weren't at camp, I don't believe. They just came up for this performance. And then there's Carol Bacon, Ray and Eleanor's daughter, and Jeff Ballou, who were at camp that year. And I think probably Sean Kelly and I were on the other part of the circle. But it was a lot of fun and working with Ada with the group, and so it was a great time.
Didn't Bobby Ashley dance with the group also?
Later she did, yeah. This was in the 70s.
Ah.
So Carol and I were in high school.
Okay, this was 77. Again, a group of people that we know very well. Kamrin's down here in the corner. This was not her first year, but you can see she was quite the teenager. She was not an adult camper yet. So this was the class of 77 with all these young girls that came. And this is Linnea, who's now with Chubritza, one of the bands that has been hired and is frequently still hired to perform at dance festivals. Mike Justo's been around at camp since the 70s, and he's been a photographer for camp and a mainstay. The Galts, this is probably the group that was there from Santa Clara County. So this is the Galts, Krista Valero, Ray and Eleanor Bacon. Dick Rawson is also one of our current photographers, and he's been at camp a long time. There's a man, Gordon. Howard Young was on staff a bunch of years. He was the one I told the story about complaining that his first year, Gordon said, okay, we get to take the refrigerator up to Jerry's room.
Yep.
And that's Veronica in front of Krista.
Okay, so you're talking about,
Right in front of Krista is her daughter, Veronica.
right.
Next to her, Cindy Lewis, and then Carol Bacon. And then behind Howard is Diane Childers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
behind her is Noel Kelly, Sean Kelly's brother.
So you guys were all in the same dorm?
Probably.
77? I'm not so sure of that.
Yeah, maybe not.
Because I think we're in the quad area by then. So we were probably in several different dorms.
Okay, this, I believe, is the faculty that year, so this is what they were looking at. This is when Sunny Blowland came as a teacher, so she was no longer just a camper. This is Ada with her son. Her son came and taught with her.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh, yeah. Dick Crum is here in the back.
Lambert Knox.
Lambert Knox, he came and did, I think it was just one day a week, right? He came and did round dances.
Monday afternoon. was, and he'd do like 2-3 hours and teach several round dances, and then we would do them during the week.
Right. And oddly enough, they were never in the syllabus. I've looked for them many times, and they were never included in the syllabus because he wasn't like on the staff the same way they were. He just sort of showed up. So many of the dances that we do know that we learned from him, there's no documentation because he didn't provide notes. This was the year that Moshiko was there, and Yves Moreau, and John Pappas, and the Galts. It was quite a year for campers. They had a good selection.
Forward and back.
Bernardo.
Bernardo Kader.
Yeah,
Susanna Daly next to Sunny.
yeah.
And Kirko Recker behind her.
Yeah, Perko, yeah.
And this one I just liked. It was one of those pictures that I saw and I said, oh, I have to share this one. I just thought it was so cute. Darlene has been a mainstay at camp for decades. She was the one I think I showed pictures of earlier that named the hole in the wall. She's worked in the office. She's worked at auctions. She's done, she knows so much about costuming and what's authentic and what's not. You and Denise, you and Darlene seem to know what's proper, what's not, what's real, what's a reproduction.
Well, she has an amazing knowledge of costumes, and she knows where all the bodies are buried also.
Yeah, I wish we had been able to get her in on this, but she works for Paramount Studios still, and she has to work, or she is working, and
Yeah,
wasn't able to join us.
Vice President.
Is she really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's still,
Okay, so she's not just your low-life person. She's really up there in the
Yeah.
Bingo.
studios.
she wants to retire, but they keep offering her more money because she truly knows where all the bodies are buried there.
Yeah.
She's got all the records of everything that's gone on there, and when they're in trouble with contracts or this or that, they go to her and she can dig out the original information.
And she remembers it, too.
Yeah. So.
I think probably they don't want her to retire because they're afraid she's going to write a book.
Yeah, she might.
This was the year that Bora and Marge were there together. I thought that was a really nice picture of the two of them. It was a big year for a lot of other people as well, but that one I just thought it's one of the rare pictures we have of the two of them together. And this is Gordon in his prime.
End of the week.
The end of the week, right. He'd already put up and taken down and put up and taken down and put up and taken down and walked around with his keys and yeah. This is another one of those pictures I had to share. I have so many pictures of Stella. She had a couple of different last names depending on who she was married to. She's a very popular lady. She's tiny. She's probably maybe topped out at 5 feet even. And people love to take pictures of her because she wore lovely costumes and she was very photogenic. And over the years, she just enchanted people. She can't come to camp anymore. She's in a senior living facility, but she still subscribes to Let's Dance magazine, and she keeps in touch with the Chang's dancers. And there's just so many pictures of her. I could have a whole series just on things that Stella wore to camp because she was a very photogenic lady. And this series is about the assemblies. They had a thing they used to call them SITS sessions, S-I-T-Z, SITS sessions, and they were on the lawn, they were in the gymnasiums, they were in classrooms, wherever they could find a spot, and they were the thing that frequently happened in the afternoon, some of them scheduled, some of them not, some of them organized, some of them just people sort of assembled and said, let's sing some songs on the lawn. But these were different people that shared, and people gathered around and asked questions, and they say sometimes there was a formal classroom situation, but this was a lot of afternoons were spent sitting around talking with our illustrious leaders. This is Ralph Page in this one. Anybody remember a particular sit dance? This is looks like Dick Crum and Yves Moreau.
They in the 80s, the assemblies were not being well attended, so they decided to try something different. So these were in lieu of the assemblies for a few years. And they were popular somewhat, but then it was decided to go back to the assemblies.
I remember Dick Crum teaching us how to sing Stome y Milo, and the way he would help you pronounce the words was hysterical. One was Migo Jano. He'd go, Migo Jano. It was so much fun. He was just a hoot.
This looks like John Pappas is leading or accompanying some singing. So coming up to the 80s. So in the 80s, here are some of the people that that were coming to camp. The Galts are still mainstays in the 80s. Marianne Taylor was quite a character. We'll see more of her. This is the cost of camp. And we did then have a lot more commuter campers, people that lived in Stockton, Modesto, Bakersfield even. They would drive up an hour so they didn't have to pay for their room and board, and they would commute. And some of them only came for the evening classes, the two that were held in the evening, but they got partial credit and enjoyed the camp environment and their own bed. So as part of the picnic, they would have games.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started doing the outdoor picnics after they shut down Mickey's Grove.
Ah.
There was a barbecue out in the lawn.
Yeah, had a barbecue and had dinner outside.
So this is Jeff O'Connor in the back. I think we finally heard that there had been a pie throwing contest or pie throwing booth, and he got hit with a cream pie, and that's why his hair has got whipped cream in it. But this was going to be a watermelon eating contest, and this is Asha Goldberg. He was a popular fixture at camp for many years. And the
Paula
corn
Pampas on the right.
Yeah, Paula Pampas. And the corn here is what, Kamrin?
From the Carleys. They would pick it in the morning and we would enjoy it during the barbecue.
Yeah, they lived up on the Delta, had a farm there. And then they would pick corn in the morning and bring it down, and they would cook it up for Wednesday dinner.
This is another one of the games that they would play. See how many people you can fit under the parachute.
And Glenn Bannerman.
It was his game?
Yeah.
Yes.
There were other games that we would play with the parachute too. Like the shark.
So they frequently had, well, they still do, they have banquets on Saturday that have some kind of a theme. And for some reason, people love to have weddings. We've had Japanese weddings, we've had Hungarian weddings, we've had Romanian weddings, we've had Israeli weddings, Yemenite weddings. We have all kinds of weddings. And this seems to be a popular way to get any two random people to sit next to each other and pretend to be a bride and groom. So this is Kamrin and Gordon, who were not married at the time, but some 8 years later, they did actually get married.
8?
7.
7 or 8 years, am I right?
I don't know, what year was that?
It says 1982.
Okay.
Is that Kalman Magyar there?
Yes.
It was a Hungarian wedding, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, 80.
That's the two of them after they were married. We could do a whole series on camp romances. There's a lot of them that have stood the test of time, including many of the people that are in our panel right now. This is another one that I shared after I asked Elsa for permission. So Elsa met Frank Bacher at camp, and she emailed me when I found this out. There was a piece, I think, in Let's Dance magazine when they talked about how she was Elsa Isaacs at the time, and how she had recently married Frank Bacher, and everybody was so happy for her, and she was happy. And so I wrote to her about it, and she said, yes, we fell in love at Stockton. It was a wonderful place to be in love. And they continued to come many years after that. And then he died, and she's continuing to come to camp and still leads a folk dance group. But there's one of the many folk dance romances that we could discuss, but won't. This is, again, one of the lawn parties, I think, in the 80s, one of the times when they had folk dancing on the lawn outside the quad. And John Filsich is leading the line. Marilyn Gentry would eventually go on to be teaching Polynesian dance. Louise Littaker That's Joyce Clyde. I'm not sure who these guys are.
That guy, he was Bert somebody, the tall guy. Bert Sholin.
Yeah, they came to camp many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is another just a fun picture. I'm sorry it was not printed very well, but it shows a lot of our teachers. And I guess it was the hat dance on Thursday, but there's, this is Yaakov Eden. This is in 84, 85, somewhere in there. Steve Katansky, Jerry Helt, John Pappas, Yop Legwater, Jeff O'Connor, and Ercha McKillop. I don't know these two women. Do any of you know them?
Marianne and Susie.
It looks like Mary Ann and Susie.
Oh, yeah.
You're right, they are. Okay. Okay, let's talk
Before you move on,
Okay.
Loui, when you mentioned Frank Bacher's badge, reminded me, when I first came to camp, all the first-year campers had to wear green badges. And that got stopped because people didn't like being singled out as a beginner camper. So now no one has to wear a green badge.
And the dot signified which week you were there.
Okay, so these are two of the members of the research committee. There's a lot of research committee pictures. I'm not going to show them all, but these were the people that create the syllabus in the beginning. They have a preliminary syllabus, and then they go through and sit in the teachers' classes and make sure that the syllabus is correct. And for many years, they actually produced an errata, which was supposed to be picked up by the teachers second week. First week, people got it mailed to them. And the bad news, of course, is a lot of people never looked at the errata. So there were a lot of dances that they went in the wrong direction. They started with the wrong foot. They lifted when they should have stepped. But the errata was produced to correct any errors in the preliminary syllabus. Now, of course, with computers, we can make a final syllabus with all the corrections in it. So this is Ginny Wilder, who ran it for many years, but she was not obviously the very first committee. This is back in the 80s. And Ruth Ruling took over from her, and then we've gone through iterations since then. This is another picture of the research committee from about the same time, a little bit earlier. These are all the people that worked on it. It was a huge undertaking. We don't have quite as many people now, but a lot of people worked very, very many hours to make sure that that syllabus was correct. So this was, I'm not going to name them all, but these were all people that worked at camp, and they got basically were on scholarship in order to keep the research committee at work. Let me back up. This is, Joyce was the one who took over from Ruth. So Ginny Wilder had it for a number of years. She ran it. And then Ruth Ruling took over, ran it for many years. And then Joyce Clyde.
Larry and Ruth Miller on the left.
Me?
Larry Miller and his wife, Ruth.
Yeah. Yeah, they were on research for many years. I think I have pictures that go back for the 70s when they were on it. There's a lot of people.
Stan Isaacs.
Lister, Stan Isaacs, Edie Cuthbert, Ginny Wilder. So I think at this point, I'm not sure she was the head anymore. She at one point had to back out. And Zora May and
Dorothy Tamburini.
I'm sorry, I'm missing. Yeah, Dorothy Tamburini and Bruce Wyckoff. I think this is Chan. I'm not sure. And this was, I like this picture simply because it was the first year that Masanori and Sayo came to camp. And they have been coming every year since this. This was 1980, I think it was 86, maybe 85. But they were primary movers and shakers in getting the Japanese community to come to camp year after year after year. And they arrange, it's sort of a scholarship program where they only bring their primo dancers over. They don't just let anybody with a bunch of money join the group. They have to sort of petition or ask for permission from their group to say, I'm willing to go if you'll help me pay, and I'll go and get the dancers and bring them back to you. So they really are ambassadors from Japan, and Sayo and Masanori were the ones that got that started. And to this day, I can tell you, they'll put an extra $1,000 down so that they can go into the camp store and buy any T-shirt that's left over. They put all that money that they've already spent, and they take it back in terms of merchandise. They buy they buy dozens of T-shirts so they can take them back and then resell them for the people in Japan who love to come to Stockton and can't always afford to do so. So this happens to be a fun year. This was '86, and I have some important people. Here's Kamrin down here in the corner. This year at Stockton, the Van Gales were, they didn't teach new dances, but they did tours of their home and their costumes and the workshop, and just were really instrumental in helping folk dance camp this year during the virtual camp. But this is Maurice and Tinica, and they were there.
Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar's over here. He was the guy that built the floors. We'll talk to him about him in a minute. Over here in the corner, let me see if I can move my screen over just a little bit. This is Steve Katansky. Can you all see that?
No.
I think this is probably, I don't think I can move it over anymore, unfortunately. So Steve Katansky's over there in the corner. Let me back it out. There you can see him. So Steve Katansky was there that year. There's Denise over there in the corner. Bruce is in the back. The McKays are still coming to camp. This is Joyce Clyde. She was with Hole in the Wall and many other things. And this is Kamrin's mom, who started coming because of Kamrin, and she was a photographer for many years at camp. There's a lot of other people here I could point out, but again, I don't want to spend a lot of time pointing out every single person that's in the picture. This was just a cute picture. Again, this is Dick Crum, Eva Rowe, and Graham Hempel. He was from the Bay Area, later moved down and worked with Amnon in Southern California. I have another picture of, I think it's Bruce and Bob, no, Steve and Bob and Gordon doing the same thing, but I didn't include it. It seems to be a popular pose to take when you're in a mood. This is the McKays. I believe he has just retired in this picture, and we're going to get to our next director in a minute. So
he looks happy.
Yeah. And these are the next, this is the next director. So this was '88. The picture was taken in '88. I think you became director in '87, Bruce?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
I might comment on that. When I became director, Jack gave me that $1,000 textbook, and because we were part of the lifelong learning program at the university. A few years later, the university decided we were a conference, not a part of a program within the university. So we then had to pay conference fees, which we are doing right now and have been, where our budget went from, to now is $240,000 a year just to run camp, renting everything and all that sort of stuff. That all happened during my watch.
It's your fault.
My fault. I got nothing out of it, though.
That's your fault.
That's my fault. Oh, boy.
Okay, these are pictures of recipients of the Fickle Foot, which was Bruce's bequest. He started it, and it ended when he became the ex-director. But what was all that about?
Well, Rowan and Martin, way back in time, had a program, and they gave the fickle finger, every week. I didn't want to give people a finger at folk dance camp, so I created the foot instead. And it started off happening every day, and that person then would take it, and then next day they would present it during our assembly. It got so it took so much assembly time that we decided to do away with it every day and just once a week, and usually happened during talent show. That's been around for a long time.
So what were do you remember some of the memorable Fickle Foots that you gave out?
Well, the guy who lost the swimming suit diving into the pool was one of them. People who stuck through their review classes got it almost automatically. And there were a bunch of them, different things.
I think
Out of your room.
Yeah,
Does anybody else remember any?
Lock yourself out of the room. That was
Yeah.
a good one.
Everybody you see pictured right here has one time or other earned a foot.
And they'd sign it.
Where's the foot now, Bruce?
Jeff got rid of it.
What?
Yeah, he
He's
smashed
cremated.
it to pieces when he took over as director. He had a big ceremony when he smashed it to pieces.
No.
I know. I was very sad too. I liked the Fickle Foot. I thought it was a fun tradition. I remember, I don't remember whether she got the fickle foot. I think you just said that she couldn't get it because it didn't happen at camp. But I remember you said something about Suzanne Roca Butler driving home and falling asleep at a stop sign near her house. And I don't know whether she confessed to it and you decided that you would share with the camp, but you said, remember you said that you were not going to give it to her because it did not happen at camp. It was just a result of camp. But that was another one that I remember.
Suzanne got it for that. That's true.
Oh. And this was, we mentioned Eleanor Bacon a little while ago. I thought I would put in a picture of her. She was an extraordinary costume maker. She did not collect new costumes. Did not collect authentic costumes. She collected and made reproductions. And she was an artist. I remember hearing stories about she would go to a concert, Tamburitsins, Aman, whatever, and she would sit there with a sketch pad and would sketch the costumes as the people were on stage. She paid almost no attention to the dancing. She wanted to study the costumes. And she helped the various women and sometimes the men as well make authentic looking costumes and get something that would make them feel like they were experiencing what it would be like to wear a Hungarian costume. But that's her in the middle with her sewing machine. And people would spend hours in her little cubby hole making, learning how to attach lace and learning how to make the bodice work correctly. And she was quite an extraordinary woman in terms of her costume design.
And she used to do a lot. She and Ray and Carol were all members of Ensemble International, and so she was involved in doing the costumes and helping Ned and Mary, and I believe choose costumes for the different programs that we were working on.
This is just another one, a little more modern. This is her husband, Ray, over here, and Marge Gaitchke. They're probably discussing whether it's authentic or not, because she was I only handle authentic costumes person, and Eleanor was one that wanted to reproduce them and to such an extent that people couldn't tell the difference. And Oscar. Oscar is responsible for our floors, the ones that we use now. For many years we had floors that were good, we could dance on. Well, for a long time we had floors that were terrible, but we didn't care. But as we aged, we really needed to have good wood floors with a spring to them. And what happened that we needed floors?
Well, it all happened when they decided to have the 49ers come and use the Pacific campus as their training grounds every year. And so we realized we had a problem because we're going to lose facilities, which we did. Our major dance room was no longer available for us. So we had to go to a church. And this looks, it's not a church, this is one of the other rooms that we used.
Yeah, we started using this when we went to, this is one of the dance studios.
Yes.
Orchestra band rehearsal room.
Yeah.
So the first year, we went across the street to the church, and we went and used their large room, but we needed, didn't want to dance in concrete, so Oscar created the wooden floors. We had a thick floor and a thin floor. That's a thin floor you just saw there.
Well, we're in the middle of renovating them, so half of were done a couple of years ago, and the other half that we use at Grace Covell is down by Santa Cruz with Tony, and he's redoing the floors.
And these are ones, and I don't know if you can tell if I get in close enough, these had to be screwed into position.
Right.
And Tony's making them so they have little twist locks so they don't have to be screwed into position with a power drill.
Right,
and
they're called coffin locks.
Yeah, they're really amazing floors. And I have a series of photographs that I took one year when this one was put in, including taking them out of the van because they have to be transported from our storage unit. So we have 3 floors. How many square feet of flooring do we have?
Oh, gosh.
A lot.
A lot of square footage. Okay, so we don't know how many, but it's a lot.
I'll
And
give you an estimate tomorrow.
And how long does it takes several days to install them.
Yeah.
Picking them up isn't quite so bad. And how much does it cost us to store these babies?
Well, we put them all in one storage locker, and that runs us about probably $3,500, $4,000 a year for that storage locker.
But well worth it. I don't think there's a dancer that comes to Stockton that doesn't appreciate the fact that we have the most amazing floors.
Yeah.
And it's all because of Oscar.
Yeah, and it's a well-organized process of getting those floors out and putting them down. It's
Choreographed.
well, it's a well-choreographed dance, let me tell you, and with a lot of really competent people doing that. And I'm not sure if that's Tony or not.
Yeah, this is. I think this is Tony here.
It
The
looks
other
like-
one is David Carmen.
Yeah. No, that's not David. This is one of the scholarship students.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of Teddy and Al Walterbeek's kids.
oh.
I don't think. Yeah, David's not that. No, he's not. He was never that young.
Really?
Part time.
And before we had photographers for many, many years, starting at the very beginning. They were always photographers. But this guy, I believe his name is Frank Kane, he would do portrait work. And he was evidently very, very good at it. And people, I've seen some of these have been stored in the Federation lockers. So we have some of them today, some of them not. But he did a lot of portrait work in addition to the photographers. But we saw this earlier. This was one of our earlier photographers. There were other people that took photographs, but he was the one that consistently took photographs. So these one of them was for slides and one of them was for pictures. Is that right, Gordon?
Right, the twin lens reflex, the one that you see on the right, he would use black and white film and process it, and then the 35 millimeter one he'd do with slides. And according to Chip, when he got back from camp, it was a family affair for about 2 weeks of developing and printing all these. He did it right there at the house apparently, and they had a little dark room and getting everything ready. So everybody got a chance to participate.
And he may have taken several hundred, and now we have a team of 5 or 6 photographers, and we take somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 photographs a year.
Wow.
But it's digital, so you just click away. You don't really care. You just take hundreds of pictures, and a lot of them aren't worth looking at a second time.
It doesn't count. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. And Elliot Kuhner, a professional photographer, joined the ranks soon after he started coming to camp, although he has been reluctant to share some of his early photographs because he says they're terrible. I'm sure they're not.
Huh.
But he seems to think, oh, no, I could never show this to anybody. I was really not very good at it at the time. I'll show you my later stuff. And later on, Georgia Milton and Nancy MacKnight, this is Kamrin's mom. They were the photographers, and Kamrin helped out a lot too. I have a picture of her with a camera, so don't let her tell you that she didn't take a few pictures.
Oh no, there was a couple years there that Kamrin and I did all the photography.
Okay, well, whatever years they were, these were other people that took photographs, and the board used to look like this. They would put the pictures on. Georgia would take them to the processing plant and print them, and then label them. You could see the little white labels on there, and they have a number, and then you could sign up and say, I want 2 copies of E102. And then when camp was over, she would take all these pictures down, put them into photo albums, and store them. And that's how I've got many of the photographs that we have. The bad news is a lot of these little stickers didn't come off. They were like glued on permanently. And no matter how I dried them or soaked them or used Gooby Gone, whatever, could not get them off. I wound up taking them, putting them in Photoshop, and Photoshopping them out of when I could. But those little stickers were the bane of my existence for many months when I was trying to sort these and get them scanned.
But that was the only way we could keep track, and people could actually order pictures after camp.
Oh, absolutely. I know why they did them. It was absolutely vital, but from a standpoint of using them later, those stickers made me crazy.
Yeah, I imagine. And there were thousands and thousands of them.
Thousands of them. Oh, yeah, thousands of them.
And they used to put little bubbles with little sayings and stuff and put them on people's doors.
Right.
Yeah, they have the ones.
And some of these pictures I have seen. So this is what we have now. So they're digitized, and we have them on photo slides. They're little photo frames. And during the week, I get the sort of the rushes, I guess what you'd call them, and I transfer them onto a little thumb drive and stick them on the back of this so people can see. Usually I have one in the back here which is gone but not forgotten, which are people that have died. These are just old black and white photographs, of which we have many, and then the other 3 are dedicated to either that year or the previous year. So these are some of the teachers and events that went on. This is Nora Knuckles and Marilyn Gentry. This was an early picture when they were not doing anything related to Polynesian, but eventually Marilyn, and with Nora as her sidekick, I guess you would say, would teach Polynesian. And it was Nora that started the hat colo. This is another picture of them when they were teaching Polynesian. But the hat colo became a tradition. I don't remember what year it was, but I went back through old copies of the footnotes to see if I could find it, but I wasn't successful. But reportedly, Nora was the one that started it because she went into the auction, which was happening at the same time, the silent auction, and bought a hat, and she brought it out on the floor and put it on her head, and it had the little sale tag dangling from it. And somehow people just got a real kick out of this, and they decided to have this hat colo where we would do a colo around the room, and everybody would wear some crazy hat. Some of them were crazier than others. Some of them were just pretty hats.
It's Tony.
And they do get crazier and crazier as the years go by. I have so many, there are hundreds of pictures of people from the hat colo. And they have one of, I guess, Sonia and Christian with their banana hats that they made one year. And Joyce Clyde is I think Jerry Hill has one where he has a toilet paper, no, not toilet paper, the toilet cover that he's made into a hat.
Every year.
Yeah. Joyce Clyde has made hers out of paper cups many times, whatever she happened to have in her room. Barbara Bevan told me that she has had a different hat every year, every week she has attended.
Wow.
She's managed to have a different hat for every single one of them. But it seems to be it's for a brief moment of time. Everybody has a hat on. This is another picture of Tineke and Maurice, which I was going to share during the week because it was them with their now adult daughter when they came to camp. This was about the staff. Unfortunately, I have very few pictures of the staff, the office staff. This is Carol Lawton, Jan Wright, and Vera Hollifer in the early days. But I looked through many, many years. It seems to be that people wanted to take pictures of the campers and dancing and the bands and the banquets and the lawn parties. Nobody walked in to take pictures of the store or the office, which I thought was pretty sad. But we owe a lot to our staff members that over the years have made sure that we have laundry cards and keys that work, and the footnotes get printed, and the bills get paid, and the syllabus gets assembled. There's so many things that they do, and I don't want to say they're not thanked. They certainly are. They get a big round of applause every year. But there are so few pictures of them, which I think is really sad. This is the most recent one I found. I think this is from 2018. Ann Braden and Cookie. Our director before, I had one picture, and I thought it was a good idea to have some pictures of our directors because they do an enormous job to maintain camp. Jeff was the director after Bruce and before Gordon, and he was a mainstay at camp. He started coming again as a teenager in the 60s. Did he come before you, Gordon?
No. He was after, I don't know. He started when Jack, I think Jack had a heart attack, and Jack needed somebody to be sort of his gopher. And Jeff just lived right there next to campus. He could walk right across the little footbridge, and he was right there. So I think he was like 15 or so his first year. And I'm not sure the first year he actually stayed on campus. and he worked for Jack and did a lot of the Jack's footwork for him.
So I'm imagining it was sometime later in maybe the 70s, maybe the late 60s. But he was at camp every year. I think he was scolded one year because he actually had the audacity to go to a friend's wedding instead of coming to camp for the full week. I mean, he missed like the weekend, but somehow it was like he was being unfaithful to camp because he had gone to a friend's wedding. But he was there every year until he retired as director.
Yeah, I remember him complaining that he got sent home once because he forgot his badge. He went to class without his badge and
Yeah.
he got sent home to go fetch it.
Ned Wilder.
Yeah.
So Bear Hollifer was strict too.
And there's our current director and his assistant director, as we will call her. I don't know whether the whip behind the director that keeps it
Which
in line.
one's the assistant?
The assistant director, yeah.
Well, did we talk about that was picture was taken in Baxter Stadium? The football team played their games there
Yeah.
originally, and that's where we did our final party.
Just been quite a ride.
So we're back to our first slide, and that's the end of our program for now. We anticipate having more of these in the future, both recorded like these Zoom meetings and in person. We would love to do these in front of a live audience where there can be some interaction and question and answer and that sort of thing, but that would require us to be back on the University of the Pacific campus to enjoy each other's actual physical company. So look for more in the future. We have many, many more photographs to share. As I say, the collection is 45,000 or so and growing. Color, black and white, bad, good, indifferent, out of focus, shameful, whatever. We have a lot to share, and I hope to do so very soon.
Well, I think we're just a little over halfway through the history of camp. So we've got a lot to go. We've got the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s. So a lot of pictures and a lot of memories and a lot of changes at camp as technologies change. You know, no longer do we have to have a Volkswagen Bug full of record cases to play music. Now all we need is a little iPod, and it's got all the music on there, and we just don't even have to plug it in. We just set it down next to a Bluetooth amplifier, and we're off and running. So amazing difference. I remember hauling all those damn record cases around for people.
One of the camp romances is yet to be told.
Yeah.
Some of them can't be told.
Well, that's true.
True.
Stories untold are the, well, won't go there.
I think what we've learned here is that we were so fortunate that we had so many people who had a vision of what folk dance could be and made it grow and have innovated it and made us all love what it is and how we enjoy it every year.
Well, I think we need to really think a special thanks to Lawton. He had the foresight to not just run it as a summer class that he put together, but to organize a committee to help organize it and to bring in other people and other talents and organizational skills. And I think the original 20 years set us up to have a successful camp, and we're still going as strong after 73 years. And I don't know who will be doing it 73 years from now, but I certainly hope camp is still there.
I think the important thing we've seen so far is the dedication of so many talented people to make this happen and continue to happen. Really, it just is amazing the people who have stepped forth to make it really a very successful adventure.
Yeah, I think we've been very fortunate that whenever a void has occurred, that somebody's been willing to step in and fill that void. And that's, you know, a great recipe for continued success. So.
I agree.
At the risk of being too historic, I think 2 or 3 things made camp last. One of the major underpinnings of Dad's philosophy was that this was a recreational activity. We were not going to be professional dancers, but we needed to have fun. And there was always in those early years a recreation specialist that made sure the camp stayed lively and didn't take itself too darn seriously. And as Bruce said, all the volunteers, the people who have been behind the scenes that have continually been there, and whenever something needed doing, there was somebody there to do it. And the variety. I think over the 70-plus years, we've never become a specialist camp. We've always had teachers from different parts of the world. We never repeated the same camp the next year. We always had a lot of virtual research and finding new teachers, and this was a place that a lot of teachers launched their careers. That's part of what made camp special.
And the quality of the camp has just been amazing. Bringing high-quality teachers who present material very clearly that people can take home and teach to their own groups. And year after year, just the quality of both the teachers, the staff, and the people that come to attend has been amazing. Kind of sets Stockton apart from a lot of camps. Plus the research committee and all their hard work doing the syllabus. So we have a record that goes back for so long and will continue into the future. Plus the new, well, not the new, the videotaping. So now we have a written record as well as a video record of the dances that have been taught. It makes the camp very valuable.
And I will tell you that when I was managing the website and I would look at the statistics on what pages got the most hits, it's our archived syllabi. There are people that do research all the time, and they go to the syllabi because they know that they were researched, and assuming that the errata is there and they pay attention, they are accurate. Every once in a while I'll have somebody to say, you know, I found a mistake in the 1992 syllabus. Would you mind correcting it? And, you know, if I've got it, I do. But by and large, they are very valuable tools. And we're one of the, I think we're the only camp left that still insists on having a written record. And the photography is astonishing. The record that we have of people, teachers, events, the stuff that makes Stockton special, it's all there for people to see. And that's an extraordinary gift to the world. And now that it's digitized, it will be there until the sun decides to not shine anymore. So thank you all of you for being part of this. It was a journey for me, and I learned so much every time. Every time there's a new story, there's a new personality, there's a new anecdote, and I thank you all for being part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Loui.
Thank you, Loui, for doing all the work to collate and organize this thing and put it together.
I'll do it again when we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Loui.
Thank you.